What's happening, people? Welcome back to the Athletes to Athletes podcast. In case you didn't know, it's draft week. We're just a few days away from the 2023 NFL draft, where a ton of players will be waiting to hear their name called to join their new teams. And as we get ready to find out who will be selected number one overall, I got to chat with former NFL Pro Bowler Ryan Clark. The Super Bowl champion discusses going undrafted, playing alongside some of the best defensive backs to ever step on the field, guiding his son through the recruiting process, and who some of his toughest competitors were. It was great to chat with one of the best NFL analysts in the game right now, and I am truly honored to have him on the show. So I hope you enjoyed today's conversation with Ryan Clark, and as always, I appreciate you listening to the A2A podcast. So welcome back to the A2A podcast, and today I have a man on that really doesn't need any type of introduction, but I'm gonna give him his flowers because he deserves them. He's an NFL analyst, he's a former Pro Bowler, he's a Super Bowl champion. He's running around doing a ton, the host of the Pivot podcast, Emmy nominee currently, new update on that. So, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Ryan.
Appreciate that.
I appreciate you coming on. Yeah. And I appreciate you coming on, and I'm happy to have you here on the A2A podcast. And, I've obviously listened to yours and listened and seen you on, being an analyst, and I watched you as a player. I was a DB myself, so watched you as a player. So it was great to be able to catch up with you. And the first question I have for you, and it's kind of the same question I ask for everybody, is what was it about sports that made you want to be an athlete, and who were your influences growing up? Why was it sports, right? Why was that the right
I think
path?
the question would be, what else was there to be? I don't think sports is like this thing that you all of a sudden say, okay, I have these options to choose from. I could be a chef, or I could be a lawyer, or I could go play sports. That's not the way it's presented to you when you're 4 years old. When you're in the backyard playing throw up tackle, or when there's a goal out in front of your house, or somebody has a ball of some sort, or if it's kickball, or if it's dodgeball, or whatever it is. That's not the way sports is presented to us. You go to PE and they roll a ball out there, or you go to recess and people race. And normally what happens is there's one dude that all the other people, right? And he ends up running track, right? Or there's one kid that happens to be tall and he's the tallest dude in the class. Somebody pushes him toward basketball. And so for me, I was just athletic in general. And maybe I wasn't the fastest kid in the class, but I was always one of the faster kids. Maybe I wasn't the best basketball player. I was always one of the better basketball players. And I think I just gravitated to it in that way because I enjoyed it. I never, from the time my dad gave me a football, I knew exactly what to do with it. Nobody was ever like, hey, go tackle that guy. I was like, shoot, he got the ball. I want to get him on the ground. I need to go chase him down and put him there, right? Or I had the ball and I was like, well, I know the object is to get to that end zone, or it was to get to the fence, and I wasn't going to let them stop me from getting to the fence. And I think it was those things, those natural, innate things about sports that drew me to it. And then obviously, as you get older, your sport picks you, and my sport was football. And as far as just like athletes I admired, I don't know an athlete who grew up in my era who didn't admire Michael Jordan, unless you were like a Knicks fan, or a Pacer fan, or just a fan of anybody else that he was kicking the crap out of. And Randall Cunningham was my favorite football player. I played quarterback in Little League growing up. I played quarterback early on in high school. It wasn't a lot of black quarterbacks at the time. It also helped that we got the same initials, and so I was like, oh, he's RC, I'm RC. He plays quarterback. I love playing quarterback. I had played for a little league team called the Eagles. It just all fit for me. And so he was the guy I really looked up to. And then now you look into the man he's become, especially after football. And I'm glad I admired somebody like him.
Mm-hmm. So you said football picked you, right? When did football essentially pick you, and you realized that was going to be your ticket on to the next level, right? That LSU was calling and the SEC was calling. When did football truly pick you, and you had that light bulb moment? This is where I belong.
I think I always knew. I can't really say it was like all of a sudden a coach told me that you're going to get recruited. I think all of those things happened kind of naturally, and I didn't focus on them because I loved football so much. when I played it, I just enjoyed it. I always wanted to do it. I wanted to do more of it. I wanted to work at it. It was all those things. And so when you start getting those letters, or when your coach is telling you you can be the guy to take that next step to college, at my high school, a lot of people did. I didn't go to one of those high schools where you could say, man, RC's the only one that made it to college. Nah, a lot of us
Mm-hmm.
made it to college. Actually, a lot of us went to that high school because we knew that was a way to play high level football. And so I think that that part of it was never really much of the conversation for me. For me, it was, if I go to college, I get to keep playing, right? If I go to the NFL, I get to keep playing. It wasn't about what that did for me or what that did for my family. It was that I didn't want to be one of these dudes who's playing flag football because he wants to be out there. Like, I want to be playing in meaningful games that people care about. And the only way to do that was to work as hard as you possibly could, be the best that you could be as you, and hope that somebody else saw that. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's what football was about to me. That's what the work was about to me. And my coach, probably my high school coach, who's now back at my high school after going to coach at some other places, I think it was my senior year, and numbers were a big thing in my high school. So if like Dion said at Colorado, like, I'm not giving out single digits. You got to earn single
Mm-hmm.
digits. And so if you were number one or number two at my high school, like, you were a dude. You had to earn those things. Vance Joseph, who I think Vance is back in Denver, but Vance Joseph, he was the head coach. He was a head coach in the league in Denver. He
Mm-hmm.
was the former coordinator of the Arizona Cardinals. Like, he wore number one at my school. His brother Mickey played for Nebraska quarterback back in the days when they ran the option. He wore number two. Eugene Ridgely wore number two, and he went, he had a scholarship to Miami. And so numbers were big. And I was number two at my high school. That was a big deal. And my senior year, my coach, and I probably wasn't the most talented player that had been there, but he told me, he's like, you're going to be the one that makes it. He's like, you'll play longer than everybody else. But I think all those things were about intangibles, were about intelligence, were about character, were about hard work, and all of those things. And he knew I'd keep doing what I had to do to take the next step. And, thank God, through his grace, through his mercy, through some luck with injury as well, being able to stay healthy, I got those opportunities.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things you touched on was going to college was what you guys did. You went there because you knew that was the path. And I saw recently where somebody said that you were pushing some sort of narrative that you grew up like very humbly, but you're like, no, like, I went to prep school, right? Like, I had two parents, you know what I mean? Like, I don't have this sort of narrative. How important was it for you to grow up with that type of foundation?
First off, I think it's stupid that in our culture, struggle is like a badge of honor.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's dumb, right? Like, we have to get out of that mindset. No, don't get me wrong. Like, it's great that we can come from these humble beginnings and make things out of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But my parents worked to stay together. My father worked 3 and 4 jobs. My mom went to work 8 to 5, brought me to practice because she didn't want me to have to grow up like she did. Like, ain't that the point? Because she didn't want her grandchildren to have to grow up like I did. Like, I didn't know that we struggled. When my dad was giving me singles from the valet parking lot the night before for lunch, it just was lunch money to me.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was the way I had to get my lunch money, because the tuition for me to go to school was so much that all the money was on that and bills, or that they were picking what bill they were going to pay every month so I could go to high school. Like, I didn't find that out till later on in life, because they knew that I was their responsibility. They weren't my responsibility. So that wasn't for me. That's why I raised my kids the way I do. And so, like, a dude was like, you went to private school, and right? Like, these hands ain't private school. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, run up on me then. You know what I mean? Like, I think that basing our level of toughness on our level of struggle is a problem. Or being able to say that we can't relate to one another based on different upbringings is also a problem. And so for me, yeah, like, my parents sent me to a private high school. And I went to public school all before that, and my parents worked and got And my mom got permits to send me to what she thought were the best public schools in elementary. I stayed at my babysitter's house. My mom would drop me off at 6 in the morning by my babysitter so I could walk to a school that had a black principal who truly cared about his elementary school students. And she knew him. That was one of her teachers growing up. And she wanted me at that school for that reason. She worked to get me at a new school that was a public school because, that's when classes rotated. And three of the four fifth grade teachers at that school were black women. Right. And that's the school that I was in. They had levels. I don't know. I'm older than y'all. Right. So at this time, it was like you could be in honors, then you'd be like level one, so on and so forth. Honors the highest, level one. And I was in level one at the time. Miss Williams, I'll never forget her name, comes to me. She's like, I want you to take this test. She said, I believe that you belong. I want you to take this test. I passed the test. She moves me up. That forever changes my life. Right. My education is accelerated from that point on. You know what I mean? And now not only are you an all-state football player, but you're an all-state student athlete academically. And I just think that that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to want more for this generation of young people, and not just black people, young people in general. We're supposed to want more for them. And so we can't sit them down and say that their level of worth is graded on a scale based on their level of adversity, right? Because we all face different adversities. And I think that for me, just to have that sort of support system, parents at every game, parents that'll drive to the swamp, parents that'll drive to Tennessee, right? Parents that'll drive to Starkville, like that level of support is very important. And it's the same reason that I'm on a red eye every Sunday morning from the West Coast watching my son play because I don't care that he grew up with both parents. I don't care that he grew up in private school. What I care is that win or lose, when he walks out of the locker room, he sees his father. That's what matters. That don't make him soft. Like he's actually one of the more. I told him the other day, son, you got to stop acting like you came from struggle. Like you can eat, you know. But nah, man, I just think that I'm very grateful that I grew up the way I did. I think those things have helped me not only be where I am, but also instill some of those values and foundations and basic principles in my children.
Mhm. So now you just talked about, your son and him playing on the next level. And, obviously, as somebody, I grew up with somebody who's a professional athlete in my family and who was a fighter, and I was constantly trying to just be my own person. Do you find that he tries to kind of be his own person and not kind of live the Ryan Clark life, right? Like he really tries to get out from underneath that?
Nah, Joe's cool. The only thing, he would never wear my numbers. Like that's kind of the only. I wanted him to wear number two. He always wanted to be number one because he liked this guy Vernon Hargraves, from Florida. That was his favorite
Mhm.
player, and so he wore number one. I begged him to wear number two. He never wore it. Maybe if he gets a shot at the next level, he'll wear 25. Um, I think he's embraced it
Mhm.
more than anything. And I've always, since he's been in high school, I've always trained him as well. And so a lot of what I think is important about work and effort, he thinks those exact same things. I also never have the conversation with him, I did this or I was like this.
Mhm.
If I ever have that conversation, it's about the things that I didn't do correctly. It's about wanting to be in Tigerland my senior year after the game and drinking to celebrate a win rather than preparing myself for the next morning runs. Don't slip into that because you've had success. Don't. So if I ever talk about anything that I've done, it's always to try to keep him from making the mistakes I made. And, you know, I support him and he's happy I support him. And I think we have a relationship to where Jordan is his own man because we're like totally different. We play totally different.
Mhm.
And so I think that helps as well. But it doesn't. I don't think you have to distance yourself from someone like me because I wasn't this dude who was ultimately talented. right? The things that I believe people respect about me are much like what I said with my coach. People respected that I was intelligent. People respected that I played selflessly. People respected that I was tough, that I played with a level of reckless abandon. Like those are all great football traits to have.
Hmm.
And I think it helps now that so many professional athletes respect me enough to seek my advice, to be mentored by me, to allow me to train them. So if you can look at these dudes that are going to Pro Bowls and are all pro players and they're coming to your dad for advice, they're not in any way trying to escape his knowledge or whatever it is, then why would you? So I think it's really helped for us to have kind of a sort of very young football family along with my tutelage as well.
Hmm. So kind of going back to your playing days of high school and then even college, your recruiting process had to be totally different than your son's, right? It's completely different times and everything else. What was it
Yeah,
like going from yours to his? Because you have your own experience and he obviously has his. Did you try and guide him during that
yeah, of
process? And
course.
how much different was it?
Yeah, of course I tried to guide him. I just found out recently that I got one of the last scholarship offers to LSU. I never knew that. I thought I was good. I thought they really wanted me. Um, so that was something I found out recently, which was kind of cool. Um, yeah, I think just the times are so different, you
Hmm.
know. But what was good about his process was having me and having me understand the landscape of recruiting. Jordan hated eating, like he hated eating when he was young. Loved working out and all that, but hated. So he was really skinny, right? And he's not very tall. And so my level of recruiting, knowledge and recruiting, knew that the bigger, longer, faster, stronger kids would be the ones recruited more highly than he or more immediate than he would because they would just recruit them based on what they look like, based on their
Hmm.
measurables. He didn't have that. And so we basically set out on a tour of camps. I said, tell me what schools you want to go to. Like what schools do you want to get a look at? And he, see certain schools, he'd be like, Pop, I want to go to this school or I'm interested in this school. So I take him to camp there because I knew that if you saw him work, if you saw him move, if you saw him cover, unless you were just dead set on not giving a scholarship to someone his size, you'd offer him a scholarship. And that's basically, what happened. Before he ever started a game in high school, going into a sophomore year, we went to Houston's camp and we went to SMU's camp because I knew those weren't Power Five schools, but they were good universities, and I felt like at that age and on that level, they'd see him play and they'd have interest in him. SMU loved him, but he had never started a game. They said they were going to watch him throughout his sophomore year, and if he played well, they'd offer him a scholarship, and they stayed true to their word. We went back to Houston the next year. He killed it there. They offered. You're going to these other camps, and you have the ability to say, "I have certain offers." And then we started going to the bigger camps and getting Nebraska offers and Pitt and different things like that. And that was just kind of how we moved through it. But then when it came down ultimately to making his decision on what school he'd go to, that was Jordan's decision and Jordan's decision alone. I didn't want him 3 years out to be able to tell me, this didn't work out for me, Dad, and I only came here because of you.
Yeah.
I wanted him to know that ultimately every decision has to be his because in the end, I don't take the field. I don't have to live his life. He does. And he did that. He weighed all his options, and I think he made his decision from an educated standpoint, from a point of understanding the pros and the cons of each school and how each school fit him. And I think in the end, even though some things have kind of went out of the way in ways he can't control, I thought he did a great job of picking the school.
Hmm. Now, for you during your recruiting process, and you just talked to, I believe it was Bryce Young, about how he was gonna go to USC and then change his mind to go further away from home. You stayed close to home, going to LSU, and you just said you didn't want your son to make a decision based off of you or family, right? Was LSU your decision to go to because your family would be close and you
I was
would
in
go
a
to
different
LSU?
I was in a different situation than he was.
Hmm.
My mom was very honest that they want to come to all the games, but I was going to go to Tennessee. And getting to Tennessee every week with our financial situation was going to be difficult for them. I also have a little brother who's 8 years younger than me, and he would still play on the weekends and different things. And I wanted my family to be able to see me play. And, I mentioned earlier how close we were, how supportive they were. Not only did I want them there, I knew how badly they would want to have the opportunity to support me, how much we all loved football and loved everything that went into me playing. And so, it was a big part of the decision to go to LSU.
Mm-hmm. So one thing that a lot of athletes have to deal with is, when you're in high school, you're the man, right? You're the all-star, you're the top dog, and then you get to your college or university and you're no longer, everybody's the man, right? Everybody's a state champ. Everybody is this, everybody is that. How much did you have to deal with that when you got to LSU where you're like, okay, now everybody is the man and I got to really step up, or
I
did
didn't
you not
care.
really have
Care.
that?
I didn't care. It was, I think I come from a different generation. Like there was no transfer portal.
Mm-hmm.
You, you know, and people waited to play when I went to school. Bro, I started school in 1997. Like I'm old, And like at that time, you didn't have all of these 3-year starters that just left. Like it wasn't like today's game. Dudes needed opportunities to develop. When we played our first game my freshman year, I was 17 years old. I didn't reach my 18th birthday until October 12th, right? We're 4 or 5 games in the season. I wasn't tripping either way. I was like, I don't really want to be out there like talking about it anyway, you know? But when I got there too, like when I went to school, in order to go during the summer, you had to be a part of some sort of summer program. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't that everybody started then. You started in August. So I was a part of a summer scholar program. Why? Because my parents worked to put me in private school, because Miss Williams put me in honors classes, so on and so forth, right? That's how things add up and give you opportunities. So I was there the whole summer. I worked. Like they got to see me compete with the Kevin Falks, with the Booger McFarlands, with the Larry Fosters, with the Alan Fanecas, right? The Cecil Collins. They got to see me compete with those dudes. And I wasn't far off. The Mark Romans, who was the second round pick. Oh, and so then camp starts, and I'm actually the best freshman, And so I hurt my quad probably midway through camp. Until then, I was the best. I was the best freshman in my class. It was one of the best class that LSU had ever recruited up until that point. And so like I never really felt that. Like I always had an opportunity to play. So I had the red shirt because of injury, and then my red shirt freshman year, I'm special teams player of the year because that was what I had to do. I was the nickel back, and I played special teams. The next year, I'm a starter, right? And I started for 3 years. I started, 36 straight games. And so my college experience was great. And no, I didn't walk on campus and was the man. I may not even have left the man, but when you start 36 games and you play that much football at LSU, that's a successful career. That's a good decision.
Yeah. And one of the things that people always talk about is SEC bias, right? And I kind of want you to put your SEC bias hat on a little bit and talk about what is it about the SEC that is just different, right? Each sport has their conferences that are just amazing, right? And everybody talks about SEC football. What is it about SEC football that people just don't understand that, has these guys coming out that are just dogs?
You ever look at the poorest states in the country? You ever look at that? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the Mississippis and the Louisianas and, those places. All of those schools are very SEC based,
Mm-hmm.
correct? You know how much it costs to play like travel baseball, right? You know how much it
No,
costs to play golf, right? If you're
it's
not
expensive.
if you're not the man, how hard it is to play like AAU basketball. It's not hard to find a football.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a sport that everybody can play. Everybody can afford to play it. So I think that's one thing. I think the other thing is that we love it. Like even Bryce said it. Bryce was like, bro, like yeah, they like football out here in California, but Alabama was different. What else the hell are we gonna do? Like I've been in DC, right? I played for Washington. Washington they got basketball teams and they got baseball teams and they got actors and rappers and entertainers and all this. We don't really have all of that down here. Like we care about football, like until Cash Money, we wasn't tripping on entertainers. You know what I mean? You think we was around here caring about Aaron Neville, Harry Connick Jr., And so I just think the level of love we have for the sport, it just kind of radiates generation to generation. Your parents loved it and your grandparents love it, so it makes you love it. And so I think that's where it starts. And now kids realize, well, if I want Bryce, okay, let's take Bryce for instance. If I think I am who I think I am, and I want to go win a national championship, and I want to put myself against the best, where's the best place to play? So now Alabama can go get the best player from California, right? If I'm Joe Burrow and I'm leaving Ohio State, oh, I want to go to LSU. LSU has quarterback issues, but I know what they got around them. I know that Justin Jefferson's from Louisiana. I know that Jamar Chase is from Louisiana. I know that Terrace Marshall is from Louisiana. I know that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is from Louisiana, right? All those dudes are homegrown, right? Joe Burrow comes in, now he's the number one pick. And so I just think that we have the most football talent in the South. And because of that level of talent, we can also go cherry pick who we want from the other regions of the world, people who are tough enough to say, I want that level of competition each and every week.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about your years at LSU. Now it's time to go to the draft, and everyone has, we're here in draft week right now. Everybody has what they're hearing from coaches and scouts and GMs. What were you hearing back then? And then obviously you went on undrafted. So what was that like
That was
to
probably going to
kind
be
of get
undrafted. That's what I
that?
heard. And I didn't care. I remember my draft because it was Jordan's first birthday. And I was doing what dads do, like boiling weenies for hot dogs and setting out chairs and making sure we got birthday cake and all those things. I didn't even watch it because I knew I wasn't going the first day for sure. And then kind of toward the end, you pay a little bit of attention because people are calling, oh, in this round, we're going to pick you up. But I knew the only team that would draft me was going to be the Cincinnati Bengals. They were kind of the only team that came back, worked me out, really liked me. And they drafted a guy in the fifth round. So I was like, oh, that's it. The Giants and the Saints called me right after. And by the time I got the phone with my agent, the Saints pulled their deal. So I only had the Giants. So it was easy. It was an easy choice for me. I knew where I was going, but I also knew how much football I played. Uh, I knew what I didn't do to stay prepared my senior year. I knew why I didn't play as well my senior year as I had my sophomore and junior year. And I knew how to rectify that. And I also felt that if I rectify that, I could put myself in the position that I was in going into my senior year, which was the second rated free safety in the country behind Ed Reed. Like I knew those things. And so my thought process in going into camp was I had to go out there every day and play like I knew I belonged. And on the other side of that, I had to also know that only I knew what I knew. So I had to go prove it, right? Like I knew I was supposed to be there, but apparently nobody else knew because if they knew, they would have drafted me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my goal. Go out every day and prove yourself right. Prove exactly what you think to be true about you. Go show them that every day. And thank God I was able to stay healthy. And by being healthy, you were able to get opportunities. By being intelligent and understanding and loving football, I'd be in off season. They'd be like, hey, we need a corner. Our corners are down. I want to have a corner. I can play it, right? Our dimes are down. We don't have a dime. I can play it. Our nickels are down. We don't have a nickel. I can play it. I ended up starting my second season at nickel for the Giants. The next year when I'm in Washington, I get on the field because I can play dime. And I didn't get there till the day camp started. But it was about having the knowledge of like, okay, if even though you aren't teaching me this, I'm going to learn it because maybe you'll need me to do it. And that was just the way I just moved out throughout my career until finally in Pittsburgh, maybe year seven, you know, what that was it year seven after I got hurt. And it was like, man, it took us to not have you to know how important you were. And that was like when I finally felt, dang, finally somebody gets it.
Mm-hmm. So, when we talked in the beginning, you talked about, Randall Cunningham because you were a quarterback growing up, being one of the guys that you grew up, idolizing. But, you were a DB, obviously, you were a safety and you had a chance to play with some iconic guys, right? You played with Sean Taylor, you played with Troy Polamalu. What did what type of lasting impact did those two guys have on you that you saw and that you took in from their work ethic to
First
just
off,
everything?
nothing, because you can't take nothing from unicorns. You know what I'm saying? Like nothing. Like those dudes were just different, man. Just born different.
Mm-hmm.
I say all the time, man. Like always envision, right? Like when babies are born, we're going through heaven with a shopping cart, right? And everybody has their shopping cart, and like they're throwing stuff in your shopping cart. It's like, hey, this guy's gonna be ugly. Ugh. You know what I mean? He's gonna be super handsome, right? And they're throwing those things in your cart, and then like when it got to Troy and Sean, like I know like the next 6 male babies born are very non-athletic humans, right? Because they gave them all the stuff in their shopping cart.
Everything.
They gave them speed, explosion, instincts, right? They gave them physicality. They gave them all. Those dudes were just ultimately talented humans. And on top of that, they did have a work ethic to add to that. They had a will to be their best selves as well. Like they just weren't resting on the fact that they were that good, and they just competed. Like they played as if they had something to prove every single time they were out there, as if that what we all knew, they didn't know. And they had to go show it each and every week, man. Like, I think that's the thing about them that I found so impressive was with all the talent they possessed, they still understood they had to go out and do the work. And they both did it. And I think the lasting impression for me, for both of them, is their friendship. Obviously, Sean passed, but he's one of my best friends in the world at the time. And Troy, to this day, is my closest friend that I play with. From Cali, we go visit. Like that's Uncle Troy, I'm Uncle Ryan. Like that's just the way it works. And so I think those are the things, and those memories are what stick with me more than who they were and who they are as men. Sticks with me more than who they are or who they were as players.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, you mentioned you can't really take much from unicorns, but just being around them, what's that kind of lasting legacy and things that you did kind of mentally take from them when it comes to being prepared for games that you probably still do now as an analyst, because you have to be prepared for literally everything, not just one game as an analyst.
Without question, I was way more prepared than both of them. No, I mean, and it's not, and it's in no way a slight to
Yeah.
either of them. Like if you ask Dick LeBeau, like I just read something recently, Coach LeBeau was on a podcast, and they asked him who was who's the most like unsung player you've ever coached, and he said
Mm-hmm.
me. And he just talked about all the things I had to do that nobody gave me credit for, right? And all the reasons Troy was able to be who he was because of me. Now I don't believe that part. I believe whoever would play with Troy would have been Troy. But based on our relationship, I understood what I had to do for him to be great. Like that's a different level of preparation, right? Like I didn't get to just prepare to be me, right? I had to prepare to be him when he wanted to do something else. I had to
Mm-hmm.
prepare to, so I had to know that when he wanted to do something else, I had to know what Ike was doing, and I had to know what Deshae was doing. I had to know what BMAC was doing in order so I could tell them what to do, in order so I could do what I need to do so he could do what he needed to do, right? Like I couldn't prepare. You can't, and that's what I mean by you can't take things from unicorn. I can't prepare like Troy. I got to
Mm-hmm.
prepare more than Troy, right? The difference between Troy and I is if I tell Troy this is the play that's coming, he's gonna go try to make the play. I'm gonna tell the person who I think is supposed to make the play that the play is coming so they can go make it, and then I'll go take care of what they had to do in order so they can go make the play. It's a different thought process. And so, you know, I'm finally like now as I get older, I'm comfortable, because it's like taboo, right? It's taboo to say, right? Because you wanted me to give you like this cool story about Troy's preparation and what I took from it,
For sure.
right? You know why? Because Troy's the Hall of Famer, right? And so in your mind, your thought is you had to take something from Troy in order for whatever. Like that's the thought process. And probably up until recently, I would have just lied to you. Or I just would have gave you the answer you wanted, right? I would have said, man, I took this from Troy. But really it was nothing, right? Like Troy studied a ton. I studied a ton. Me and Troy would have conversations. The conversation goes like this. RC, if I see this, this is what I'm going to do. Cool, Troy. The conversation never went, Troy, if I see this, this is what I'm going to do. Because that wasn't his job. You see what I'm saying? So now I got to go back, watch the film, watch all of those formations and say, okay, if we're in cover 6, Troy's in quarter, I got to play this like this. Okay, if we're in 3, I know if that guy's going to be going to the flat, Troy's going to blitz. Okay, I need to lean to this side. Like that was my job, you know? And so, no, I didn't take nothing from them in preparation. Be prepared for both of us.
Yeah.
All three of us. When I was with Sean, I prepared for him. When I was with Troy, I prepared for him. Because that was my job.
Yeah. So on that Super Bowl team, what, you know, every team that when you're good, you know it, right? You have, everybody has that swagger. What was it about that Super Bowl team that was just the X factor that you couldn't quantify, that you know it when you see
We
it?
were willing to kill people and die in the process.
Yeah.
Simple as that. Simple as that. We felt that 11 for 11, we were tougher than the other people. We felt that 11 for 11. And, you know, it's a joke. Like people always say, man, I'll die about this. One, no, we didn't want to die about it. That's not a real thing. But we were one of the very few teams in the world that did have a player almost die playing football. Me. Right? And so, whereas like the rest of the world or the rest of football was like, yeah, we'll die about this. We was like, nah, man, like we really got a dude that'll die about it. We seen it, you know, and that's how we played. Like we ain't scared. We weren't scared, like ever. We did not blink. You know, I always say, you know, people. So like Dan Orlowski just retweeted this guy talking about golf, and he was saying how he gets the same rush commentating that he got playing golf. And Dan was like, this resonates with me. I was like, it don't resonate with me
At all.
right? I don't get that, right? Because to me, to be running full speed and have another man running full speed, and for you to be able to look, like, see his eyes, right? Like, think about playing chicken, right? You're playing chicken with another man with a body. Like, this ain't no car. This is your body. And one of you has to pick who's going to slow down. Do you know the feeling of feeling that the 11 people on your side will never slow down? Because guess what? If I know it, the other team knows it too. You know what I'm saying? Like I would have people come to me before the game and be like, ARC, don't be out here with all that hitting, man. Don't be doing all that. You know? I know I won now.
Yeah.
Because even before the game, you signing a peace treaty. Right? Like you asking me like Ryan Garcia asked Tank, can we be friends after this? No. All my friends wear black and gold. All of them. I ain't got no other ones. And I think that's what set us apart, man. And then like we had the greatest defensive coach in the history of football. Right? And like the best man. He was such a good man. Like he would come in every year and thank us for letting him coach us. This dude is a Hall of Fame player, right? If they let you double it up, he'd be a Hall of Fame coach. And he's telling us nobodies at the time, thank you for letting me coach y'all. I mean, man, when you have like that level of respect and love for a person that respects and loves you as well, when you know like the dudes that you're on the field with will give as much as you will give, you don't need anything else. And then it just helped that like we had Troy, and sometimes he did Troy stuff, and we had James Harrison, sometimes he did Debo stuff, and we had Casey Hampton, who you just couldn't freaking move, and then we had James Ferrier, who was a genius, and you had Brett Feasel, whose freaking arms were like trees, and you know, like we just had all these dudes who were special, and we had this coach that was special, and we had this bond that was special, and we just played, man.
So one of the things that's hard for players is knowing when they're done playing. How did you know that it was time for you to hang it up and start using the degree instead?
Old. My last year in Washington, I started out really well. I played really well the first 3 or 4 games. We're playing Seattle on Monday night. The center tries to cut me on the screen, and I just feel my ankle kind of pop. I get up, I start walking off, I fall down. So they talk to me, they tell me they had to clean some stuff up. You know, I had some loose bodies in there, some bone spurs, whatever. And I was like, bro, I'm not getting surgery. I'm 35. I'm not getting surgery. And Saturday mornings, I get my hair cut, but the barber would come to the house. And my son Jordan was in the 8th grade at the time. And I would text him. And the barber's name was Money. And I'd text Jordan and be like, Money's about to pull up. I need you to go downstairs and open the door for him. Start getting your hair cut. Because I knew how long it was going to take me to get down the stairs. And I would get my hair cut on Saturday. So the game was the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And like when you get to that point, man, you just know, the what it the effort it took for me to be ready to. It was just the reward of playing no longer outweighed that. Like playing the game didn't make me feel like that week was worth it. And when you get to that point, man, it's like it's time. And I had a TV contract already. I already put things in place to to do something else. And when you're undrafted and when you're cut and when you're working at LSU and when they sign other people instead of you and you get 13 years out of it, man, and you go to a Pro Bowl and you're a Super Bowl champion and you do all these amazing things, you know that you got everything you could out of what God gave you. Right. And in the end, like that's peace. If I would have felt like I cheated it, you know, if I only played 3 years or 4 years because I didn't put the work in, then I have a problem. But if I would have played 3 years or 4 years and I did everything I possibly could, I would have been okay with that too. And I just think I had done all that I could. And my son was going to be a freshman, and I wanted to be at every freshman football game, every freshman basketball game. I wanted my daughter to play soccer and enjoy that and run track. And I wanted my parents to get to be around them. And so I made a decision that this was best for me, but it's also best for my family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and something that some athletes kind of have to go through is the confusion of knowing which way you're going to go when you're now no longer an active athlete. But you had already had, spots in, what was it, 2013 and 2014 before you retired in 2015 on as an analyst, right? So you already had these things set in motion. But did you ever have these thoughts of, am I doing the right thing with becoming an analyst, or should I go to maybe a quieter business route and own franchises or stuff like were you ever, this is where I want to be?
I love TV though. So that wasn't it. It fit though. I got to stay in football. I'm a partner here at a training facility, so I get to train DVs. Like I've always wanted to be a coach my entire life. It's all I've ever wanted to do other than play football. The day Washington called me for a tryout, I had just left Will Muschamp's office because I wanted to be a grad assistant. I still 100% believe I can be a head coach. I think that'll always be something I think about. But TV was the right fit. I think as things continue to progress and I continue to get other opportunities to create, to host, to speak about things that are important not only to me but to people that look like me, uh, it becomes more of a passion necessarily than a job that I have to love. It becomes a calling, and I think I'm moving more into that phase of it, which is a blessing. But no, I don't question a lot. I don't ask a lot of questions in general,
Mm-hmm.
which probably makes me stupider than I should be, because asking questions provides clarity. But I'm kind of like I'm where my feet are, like my feet are on TV, so I do TV.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say this. Uh, Last time, I wouldn't. I've never gone through the motions of TV. So I just love football, so I always watch a ton of football and I prepare. Um, it was, man, I can't even remember when it was, bro. Maybe 3 years ago. It was whenever Marcus Spears started, and Marcus is awesome. That's my dog. Started working a lot on NFL. They asked Stephen A. They asked him who he thought like the next Stephen A's were, right? Like who the next stars were. And like I had never cared. Like I just never thought about that. Like who cares, right? And he said Marcus, which I 100% agree with. and Chris Canty, which I also agree with. So I didn't have a problem with his picks.
Mm-hmm.
I had a problem that he didn't say me, and not like a Stephen A is a hater problem,
Yeah.
like a me problem, right? What am I not doing to make this man, who I know pays a ton of attention to it, a lot of decisions at ESPN? What am I not doing that he didn't say me? I was like, well, that's not okay. And much as I love Marcus and as much as we talk, I'm like, I'm going to be better than him. Much as Chris Canty's my frat brother, much as I love him, like I'm finna be better than him. And I was like, and I'm finna be better than Steven A. Because like that's how my mind works.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost like, right, like being like getting the last scholarship or being small or not being as fast. Like that always said, man, like you really gotta work, RC. you know, and being the first dude to have a TV contract while he played and literally walking off. Like I retired on ESPN the day they announced my contract, which I already knew I had before the Super Bowl. You know what I'm saying? It's like I wasn't the underdog. Like I was actually the guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like they were telling me, like you're gonna be the next one at this. So what had happened from that point to now, where now all of a sudden I'm not the next one? Now all of a sudden it's other people and I ain't mentioned. Hell no, no sir. Mm-mm. That's not gonna get it. And so like that's kind of been my thing. And I know I'm talking long.
Keep going. I'm good.
So Nas, right? So J. Cole has a song,
Mm-hmm.
right? J. Cole. I think Born Sinner is J. Cole's best album. Just throwing it out there. J. Cole has a song, and it's like I let Nas down, right? And he's talking about when he released his first album after all the mixtapes, doing a song that Nas was like, that really ain't it. And so John Saunders, before he passed, I get a call on my cell. I'm at ESPN, and they're like, Mr. Saunders wants to talk to you. And I was like, ooh, crap, John Saunders? Like I was like, what did he want? And I sit with him, man, and he just talked to me about not letting them box me in, and that he and like Wilbon and like all of the African American OGs, the black OGs, was saying like you special, like he could do some things. You know what I'm saying? And like I looked at myself at that point, I'm like, dang, I'm like kind of right what he said. I'm letting them do me exactly what he told me not to let them do. I'm letting them box me in to being like everybody else. And just in thinking about that, that's when I started my own podcast, Face First, just so I can work on interviewing, work on like setting a conversation. I'd go in the studio and just talk 30, 45 minutes just to learn how to do it, learn how to set those things up. Then you get the opportunity to do the pivot, and you got to learn how to do that, learn to work with two other people. Now I'm doing some other docu-series stuff, and I'm pitching ideas to Netflix and Showtime. And like now I'm like, okay, this is what they said you were supposed to be doing. You let yourself slip,
Mm-hmm.
right? You fell into senior year at LSU. And I think, for me, that's been the most fulfilling thing when you get opportunities to speak outside of football and you have an impact. When you're at the fight for, Javante and Ryan and everybody's coming up to you, whether it's Josh McDaniels or whether it's Jim Gray, saying, not like, yeah, like you the one. Like those things are cool because those are your peers who respect the level of work you do in your new career.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And one thing that you literally just talked about was just not being put in a box. And no matter where you're at, whether it's First Take, NFL Live, The Pivot, no matter what, you show up authentic and you're not allowing a lot. You're not doing code switching. You're not doing stuff like that. Like, and I know you've talked about it too. What is that conscious thought to make sure you are not being put in a box and have to kind of dim your blackness, so to speak, when you're in certain settings? Because certain people talk about that, right? I was just at
Oh,
I was at the Black Sports Business Symposium, and that was something that they talked about, was dimming that. What's your conscious effort in that?
I don't think it's conscious, to be honest. I think I'm just being me,
Mm-hmm.
And I do think it also helps that like I don't feel like ultra black. You know what I'm saying? That like I don't come from struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to private school. You know what I mean? And so I think that you I can't be like I'm not good at being anything else but me
Mm-hmm.
though. Like imagine me trying to be something else. I'd suck at it, but I know how to be me and I know how to be that authentically. And the hardest part, right? Here's why people code switch or they're not them is because they don't want the harsh critique for being them, right? Like we're not acting. I'm not acting on TV. If somebody doesn't like who I am on ESPN or the pivot, they actually don't like me. Like if you understand me, right? Like if you actually like hear what I say and you're not stupid and you get it, right? 'Cause sometimes people are just stupid and they say, well, you said this. I didn't say that. You're dumb. That's dumb. Like you misunderstood me. So I don't care about that. But sometimes like if somebody can like regurgitate what I say and they comprehended it well and they disagree, okay, right? Or they might say, I don't like you. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to be okay with that. People just aren't okay with that. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody says they don't care what people think about them. That's actually a lie. Like there are very few people in the world who truly don't care what people think. Like Channing is truly like that.
Yeah.
He actually doesn't care. Like I don't get it. Really doesn't care about nothing, you know? And like it's the freedom he must feel,
Yeah.
but so I've learned to not care about if people like me or not, right? Because you might not like me because I said your team sucks. That's fine. Or you might not like me because I said in 2016, 2017, I understand why Colin Kaepernick is kneeling. You may not. You may disagree, but that's fine because that's what I believe. Right. And what happened was in 2016, when I wore a Kaepernick jersey on TV, I was wrong. I got a call. You can't do that, RC. Right. In 2020, when the world has now changed, all of a sudden my voice was so needed. And I was like, it's the same voice. Right. And like that was truly when it clicked to me. Like, you know what? I'm so glad that I was who I was then. Right? So now can't nobody look at me and say, well, in 2016, 2017, RC, you were singing a different song. I wasn't. They were just putting me on TV less because at that time that wasn't popular, but I was still me. Right? And also too, it's abrasive. You know what I mean? Like when my personality ain't for everybody. Like I don't joke like everybody jokes. Right? Like you ain't gonna use me in no meeting for like your example without me being like, nah, that's not cool to me. Right? Like I'm gonna text the boss, hey man, like don't use me as the opposite of your golden boy, right? You know what I'm saying? Like I think he sucks on TV, And sometimes when you say that to people, like they might not fool with you. They could be like, all right, I don't like this guy, and that's okay, but you have to be willing. Like you have to be like my thing is, man, I may not get everything I want, and I'm okay with that if I was me. What I would hate to do is try to be something else and then not get it. Because then I feel like I didn't give my 100%. I didn't give my all. I didn't give it me. And so for me, like I'd rather just, I'd rather go down swinging, man. I'm not. I don't want to lose by decision.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you. I kind of want to wrap up. I got a little bit of like rapid fire questions for you. First one's kind of a layup. It may be a layup for me. I'm thinking it's probably the Super
Okay,
Bowl.
I got like 3 minutes.
I
I got
got
a call about the
that's what I
draft.
got right now.
All right.
So, what's your
Yep.
most memorable game?
First game, 2008 season, Houston Texans. Um, Doctors in January cleared me to work out. They said they didn't know if I'd ever play again, but they said if I worked hard enough, I'd at least have a chance.
Mhm.
So the fact that I was able to walk out on that field and be a starter for the eventual Super Bowl champions was just a gift from God. I'll never forget that
Yeah.
day.
Who is a receiver or a competitor that you really studied and you were like, I got to really be up for this one?
Freaking Randy Moss, but wasn't nothing you could do, bro. Like it wasn't just nothing you could do, dog. It was just no matter like what you studied, where you lined up, he just caught the Mickey Ficky ball just all the time, dog. And it was so frustrating. And Tom, I hate Tom, but I love him. Right? It's like Tom, And then he's like tall and he's handsome and he's rich. And then it just makes you hate him more. Cause then I met him and he's super cool. Just a good dude, nice and personable. And he used to eat our face. We'd be really good. It didn't matter. You know why? Cause Tom was going to get 300 because he was freaking Tom. So those two dudes, man, were just different, bro, in different ways. One was like a freak of nature and the other one just defied all rules and odds of measurement.
Yeah. If it wasn't football, what sport would you have played?
Professionally.
If it was your choice, what was your number 2 sport?
Basketball. I'm black. I mean, not to be, I can say it. Other people might not say it. You know, like it's the other sport we saw the most of us. You know, and it was a sport that we got to excel in, and obviously they're the face of basketball. You know, I wanted me a little state championship my senior year, but it was the other sport I played up until the end of high school.
What's a career goal that's on your board that you want to accomplish?
It's a good one. So I do not have like I want to do this, but I write out goals. So here's my arc, right? Here's what I want to do. I want to be the best sports analyst / host in sports TV and TV. I want to be the best GM in football. And then my final job and my dream job is to be the athletic director at a HBCU when I'm done with everything, and try to pass on that knowledge, put a school in a better position to succeed and to understand how to operate in a world where they can be respected at an elite level, both academically and athletic.
And last question is, what's a piece of advice that you think people should know, something that's resonated with you throughout your career, something you either learned on the field or as an analyst, but what's a good piece of advice you could pass on?
Man, can't nobody tell you how to be you. You got to be very honest with yourself. The best thing that I could say is everybody wants to know what they are and tell people what they are. I'm this, I'm that, I'm this. The most important knowledge you can have about yourself is what you aren't. Teaches you not to waste time, right? Like if I'm not something, I understand if that's an important thing to be, I understand how to compensate for it. Oh, I'm not fast enough. Let me learn angles. Let me understand tips and tendencies. Let me be the best anticipator of what's about to happen. Oh, I'm not a Hall of Fame quarterback, so I can't tell a straight offense. Okay, let me figure out how to tell a straight offense from a defensive point of view. Oh, they want to hear these guys, all of these dudes do touchscreen. Okay, let me do touchscreens with the theme. That's a funny theme that people can get into. Let me put Big Trouble Little China so we can talk about that, right? And so it's always been like when you understand what you aren't, you learn how to lessen your opportunities of failure. And that's what I've always focused on. Like people don't want to be honest with themselves about that because then you have to admit that you might not be good at something. Why is that a newsflash? Ain't nobody good at everything, right? Michael Jordan is clearly not a good gambler. He just got a lot of money. But he's the best basketball player that ever lived. And so I just think that, man, just understand what you are and don't see it as totally negative because you can turn those negatives into positives if you do the right thing. Thanks.
Well, Ryan, I really appreciate it. I said, I was really happy that you were able to take some time and come on here, and I really appreciate it. Like I said, I'm a big fan of what you're doing, and so I appreciate it, and that's all I got for you today, man. I'm thankful.
My man.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Athletes to Athletes podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. To engage with everything the A2A platform has to offer, go to the App Store and search Athletes to Athletes to download our new app. You can check out our educational material, and you'll ensure that you don't miss when a new episode of the A2A podcast drops. Again, thank you for listening. We'll see you again next time.